You're looking at a team charter. Charters sometimes are very simple. They could be a couple of paragraphs, but in a couple of paragraphs, the team really doesn't have enough information, nor do they understand their authority and where the boundaries are. I use this template because it's effective in making sure that I keep everything that I'm supposed to keep in mind on on my radar, essentially. This is a template, so remember that with a template, it applies to a broad set of circumstances. There may be lines in here that don't apply to you, but I'm going to go through it with you so you understand what's in it. First one is simply a description of the project and the general setup of the project. Project name, of course, and up here you can change the name of the template as well, your team name, for example. An agency sponsor might be your own department, for example, or let's say this is a cross-departmental project. You simply put that information here. So who's the primary supporter, or what department rather, and then who within that department is the chartering agent. In this module, if you haven't finished your reading, you will learn about a chartering agent. A chartering agent is the person in management who has been authorized and essentially assigned to be the management representative for the team. They should have decision-making authority. So to whom will the team report, and if they have questions or they have needs, to whom can they go? That is typically the chartering agent. Is this an enterprise project? In other words, does it have significant impact on 3 or more departments? Or you could say 3 or more work units. If it cuts across boundaries or divisions of any kind in a fairly broad way, then we want to say yes. And why? Because that tells us that there are other people involved and we need to keep them in the loop or involve them early in the project to make sure that they aren't blindsided by the things we do. Key project supporters could be your chartering agent or the sponsor. They could be outside parties, or they could be inside the agency, people who have advanced this idea or who really will support it and they're key to the success of this project. This next one, department rank, you probably won't use. In an environment where projects are ranked, this would be a place where you could put that. I've seen that one time in the agencies I've worked with, but my exposure isn't all comprehensive, so it certainly may happen, and this is a place where you can do that. Team mandates. These are the non-negotiables. In other words, whatever you do, do this, or make sure you don't do this. These are things that your chartering agent will spell out. For example, it might be gather information, but don't actually execute the project. That will be somebody else. So you want to find out what the non-negotiables are so you can put these in here and remind yourselves periodically of what those are. And who was it that gave you those? It could be your executive director, or it could be another management representative. I want to know the consequence of my decisions, and so we'll have a little discussion about the impact of not meeting those mandates. For example, do we have negative exposure in the press? Or do we have employees who suffer? Or taxpayers are in some way slighted? Or anything else? I want to know those things so that I understand the importance of those mandates. Charters tend to be living documents. You may have different versions. Your project may change slightly. Some of the other elements may change slightly. So this is simply a section for you to track those changes. Document history. Okay, if we go to the next page, this page is primarily your telephone directory. If you recall using those before. This is our contact list. So, chartering agent, our QIC representative, what's that? Well, that's in team-oriented organizations, often they'll have what's called a Quality Improvement Council. And that is a council of managers to whom teams report. So who is it on the council that is your representative? You probably won't ever experience that, and you can delete that section if it doesn't make sense to you. What's a SME? A SME is a subject matter expert, which could be someone on your team, but there could also be others in the agency or who are involved or impacted by this project that you want to list as a go-to person to kind of shorten your learning curve and make sure that you're on the right track. It's always good to have subject matter experts. And then your team members' names, where you're from, telephone, and which would be cell phone now, of course, and then email. Section 4. This is where we justify the project. We start to spell out the things that the project should not only accomplish, but why we're doing it. Everything that you see in black print ought to be deleted if you put information in here. And you're going to do that for your assignment. These are just explanations of what the sections mean. So what's the purpose? What's the justification for doing this? And as you get into data gathering, you'll learn about developing problem statements. Don't worry about that for now, but why are we doing this? As you fill this out, I don't need a doctoral thesis. Make it simple. All I'm trying to do is inform you, get you familiar with this document. That's it. So use brief answers. I just want indications that you have been through it and you have a relatively good understanding of what these things mean. Okay, objectives. I'm a big fan of defining outcomes before I do a project. I want to know what success looks like. I want to know my destination so that I can build a path to that destination. So here's where you can put those things, and there are some examples given here. Every project has deliverables. It may be a presentation. It may be a binder full of material. It may be any number of things. So you want to find out at the end, what are they looking for from the team to make sure that you deliver those things. And often they're tangible things. I like this section probably more than any other section in the charter. A clear statement of what this project will not include. The reason that's important is we often suffer from scope creep. Scope creep happens when, for example, we've learned quite a bit about our project and the elements of the project, and somebody says, hey, while we're here, why don't we work on this too? Or somebody from the outside of the team says, why don't you guys take care of this too? And pretty soon the project has grown out of proportion and out of budget. That's scope creep. And we want to manage scope creep so that that doesn't happen. We also want to define our milestones. The milestones are those things that help us understand that we're making progress. Don't create a Gantt chart here. You'll get into that in the data gathering part. But if you have, for example, if it's an 8-month project, perhaps there's a milestone each month or a phase that should be completed over different blocks of time. These are reasons to celebrate. And if we identify these milestones and acknowledge them when we hit them, then we have a chance to not only have a human moment, meaning that we can really appreciate the progress we've made together, but it also gives us a sense that we are making progress, which is important as well. Major known risks. This is essential. You want to know, as you go into this, if something goes wrong or if you talk to the right people, what are the risks? Could we end up in the newspaper? Does it subject our agency to additional liability? Things like that. So spell those risks out to the degree that you can. Constraints. You want to know what the timeline is, what your budget is, what are the limitations that your team has. Those can be spelled out here. External dependencies would be things that you are relying on to happen that are not necessarily within your control. For example, maybe you're doing a project that is relying on a grant being approved. That's an external dependency. If that grant isn't approved, the project goes away. You can't do it now. And there could be others like that. That's simply an example, but we want to define those so that we know what we're up against. You're getting to a sense now, I hope, that we're taking a pretty comprehensive look at what this project is, and so that, we go in with both eyes open, essentially. Project strategy. How does this fit in the mission, vision, or strategic plan of the organization? You might be telling yourself, I've never read the strategic plan of my agency. Well, this would be a chance for you to check in with that. Is this project and the way you're going about it actually contributing to the mission, vision, and or strategic plan of your agency? And why is that important? Section 5, do not fill this out. You could do it, but you'd just be making everything up, which you're doing anyway. All of this information might be a real project or it might be a fictitious one. Doesn't matter to me. But there's really no purpose in having you go through this budget piece. There is, however, something I should explain. Section 5 talks about the first year costs or the initial costs. That's important, but then Section 8 talks about cost of ownership. And the difference looks like this. Let's say, for example, you are working on a software project and the cost is $100,000 and you have a year to do it. So you get to the end of that year and you've completed it. Great. But what if there are $50,000 in licensing fees every year to maintain this project? Can you afford that $50,000? Is that planned for or allowed in the budget? And if it's not, then maybe we can't afford to own this project right now. So we look at both of those things. But for now, you can look through this and just kind of get a sense of what's there, but we won't work on those things now. 6 and 7, team authority. What are your boundaries? Talk to these people, don't talk to these people. You have permission to go here. You can use these resources. Spell those things out so that neither you nor your chartering agent are surprised as you move forward and begin working on your project.